Hello, sisters and brothers. Our devotional for today, for August 3, is a reflection on my utmost for his highest, a series of devotionals written and compiled by Oswald Chambers. You can always find the link for the daily devotional at utmost.org. For today's devotional, we'll turn to 3 verses out of Luke chapter 18. I'll read verses 31 through 33 of that chapter. Jesus took the 12 aside and told them, "We are going up to Jerusalem, and everything that is written by the prophets about the Son of Man will be fulfilled. He will be delivered over to the Gentiles. They will mock him, insult him, and spit on him. They will flog him and kill him. On the third day, he will rise again." And the title of today's devotional is The Compelling Purpose of God. Jerusalem, in the life of our Lord, represents the place where he reached the culmination of his Father's will. Jesus said, "I do not seek my own, but the will of the Father who sent me. I do not seek my own will, but the will of the Father who sent me." John 5, verse 30. Seeking to do the will of the Father was the one dominating concern throughout our Lord's life. And whatever he encountered along the way, whether joy or sorrow, success or failure, he was never deterred from that purpose. He steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem. Luke 9, verse 51. The greatest thing for us to remember is that we go up to Jerusalem to fulfill God's purpose, not our own. In the natural life, our ambitions are our own. But in the Christian life, we have no goals of our own. We talk so much today about our decisions for Christ, our determination to be Christians, and our decisions for this and that, but in the New Testament, the only aspect that is brought out is our compelling purpose of God. "You did not choose me, but I chose you." John 15, verse 16. We are not taken into a conscious agreement with God's purpose. We are taken into God's purpose with no awareness of it at all. We have no idea what God's goal may be. As we continue, his purpose becomes even more and more vague. God's aim appears to have missed the mark because we are too nearsighted to see the target at which he is aiming. At the beginning of the Christian life, we have our own ideas as to what God's purpose is. We say, "God means for me to go over there, and God has called me to do this special work." We do what we think is right, and yet the compelling purpose of God remains upon us. The work we do is of no account when compared with the compelling purpose of God. It is simply the scaffolding surrounding his work and his plan. He took the 12 aside. Luke 18, verse 31. God takes us aside all the time. We have not yet understood all there is to know of the compelling purpose of God. So as we reflect on that today, and we think about the compelling purpose of God, we think about this in light of the analogy here that Chambers is making with Jesus going up to Jerusalem. Where does it feel like you are in your journey? Does it feel like you are running on ahead, doing the work that God has called you to do? Or do you feel like maybe God has pulled you aside and said, "No, this is where I need you right now"? Either way, it's a good time to take notice, to listen to what God is saying to you. As we think about Jesus in this example, going up, knowing what he was going into, knowing that he was going to be beaten, he was going to be flogged, he was going to be crucified. Knowing all of that, he went anyway, because his ultimate goal was to fulfill the purpose of his Father, of God. So what is it like for us? As Chambers points out, sometimes in the Christian life, in the early Christian life, but it can be any time in the Christian life, we kind of run ahead and we say, "I've made this decision and I'm going to do this for God. I've decided to do this." Well, how much of it is your decision and how much of it is what God is really calling you to do? Sometimes we can get very caught up in our own purposes. So I ask you and encourage you to look at where you are in your spiritual journey right now. Has God kind of pulled you aside and said, "I know that you thought you were supposed to do this, but this is what I need you to do"? Or do you feel like you're right in step with what God has called you to do? Either way, our ultimate goal is to fulfill the purpose of God. That's what we're here to do. So allow that to happen and remove any obstacles that may be in the way of you doing that. Thank you, as always, for listening. Be safe and stay well.